Julie, what is the average dealership right now paying for processing? Not the average dealer pay dealership, but like the average dealership period.
Between 2 and 2.5% on their volume.
Excluding American Express.
It can include it, just depends. American Express, traditionally, everybody thinks they're the highest. Really, business and corporate cards are higher than your traditional American Express. But nowadays, with American Express Blue program, which if dealers don't have that, they absolutely should, it combines it with the other card brands. So you got a little bit more aggressive rates on those. But yeah, I mean, card brand fees can go up a little north of 3.5%, but on average for dealers with an average ticket somewhere around 400, 450, then I would say if you're at 2%, you're good. If you're slightly over, you should call somebody.
What's the Blue program? I missed that. You mentioned that dealers should all be on that.
Opt Blue. So Opt Blue is a program that American Express rolled out a few years ago. Biggest complaints of American Express is it's a separate statement, it's a separate deposit, and obviously the rates are high. So Opt Blue is a way that American Express is able to combine their processing with the other card brands. So it's included in the batch, it's included on the statements, and the rates are quite a bit more competitive compared to the other brands.
What about just from your experience, I know we were about to touch on this earlier, but any crazy stories you've encountered? I mean, just things completely unexpected, or as you've audited dealers, things that you've seen where like, wow, this is just out of the park. It's very different, weird, bad.
Yeah. So normally you would think like higher end dealers in a more affluent area would have a more sophisticated process of evaluating expenses. And credit card processing and payment processing in general are usually in the top 10, right? So you would have thought that process would be more buttoned up in some dealers versus maybe a smaller geographic with maybe a lower end car brand. It's not the case. I remember going in, it was a Jaguar dealership, and sitting down with the general manager's desk, he pulls out a statement. I about fell out of my chair when he was paying close to 4%. So, and then you go, oh my gosh. And the sad thing is he had no idea, but he had no, like if I asked him straight up, who are you using? Oh, well, I don't know. This one company that sends me this bill each month. So that's kind of where, I just realized that you got to know who you're working with. You got to trust who you're working with. And I know that trust word's really hard in the space, but I mean, there's just so many ways and antics that payments companies are taking advantage of their dealers or their merchants, especially with these new savings programs.
Julie, are there any under-discussed ways where you see dealers leaving money on the table?
Well, you'd be surprised that dealers are not auditing their processing. And there's many credit card providers out there that raise rates on a pretty regular basis, sometimes even twice a year. So I think that they should really be taking a look at that just to make sure that it is what they originally contracted with their provider.
Well, let me tell you a secret. You were mentioning dealers not auditing payments. I'll tell you a secret. It gets way worse than that, right? You could see dealers that some are much larger, some are much smaller, and the smaller ones maybe have better reconditioning standards or better sales training or compliance training. So I think, to your point, it transcends way beyond the back office. It comes down to management leadership, right? It really starts at the top. But I've personally witnessed some pretty large dealers where I don't want to say the cars maybe the used cars come from the auction to get laid on the lot, but it's not far from that. So standards across the board are definitely not standardized. And it comes down to obviously working with the right dealers, which we all know. So
right. I think transparency is kind of a big thing too. There's companies out there now that are, hey, I'm going to save you $15,000 a month and we're going to implement charging and it's going to be fantastic. And nobody really realizes that 2% effective rate, they're actually making 100 basis points. And that's just this maybe to my detriment, but I don't think so. I think it's actually to my success as I've been extremely transparent with my dealers. So to the point where they even know how much money I'm making.
Does anything keep you up at night? Like when you think about the future of your business, this industry, tell me a little bit about that.
Really just making sure that I'm priced correctly for the market, making sure the products are worth what I'm selling them for. I personally feel like we do a great job and we're more so on the low end than some of our competition. But I also want to make sure that it is an absolute value for my dealers with respect to the services we provide. But honestly, what wakes me up in the morning is new development options, new features, different things that I think are going to be more relevant in the industry in the future. We have a lot of fun with some of the technologies in our program today, but there's just so many more things that we can do. So that's what keeps me excited. But yeah, I just want to make sure that all these features and all these things that we add that are specific to these dealers still creates a great value when it comes to cost.
Now, Julie, one thing I didn't ask you is what's the consumer experience like? Because I understand how this helps our industry, but I always think about the customer and can we make their life easier? So tell us a little bit about that.
Sure. So I always tell my dealers that my customers are, of course, them, but also their customers, right? Because this is payment from them that they're accepting. So we've done a lot of work to make that consumer experience as good as possible. I think, and this stems obviously off of COVID because everybody says that, but the fact of just offering convenience.
I want to ask you a little bit about anecdotes like from the ground floor. I'm just curious what it's been like working with dealers and sort of quote unquote scary truths or like what you've seen out there happening that's going to concern you, how you fixed it. I have here, I'm looking at my notes though, and it says to ask you about a shoe. I don't really know what this means, but we'll take a quick pause here and ask you about your shoe strategy. What's your shoe strategy, Julie? Tell me about your shoe strategy.
So early in my sales career, I did sales training and it was all about being different, standing out, right? Get someone's attention. When you're selling a commodity at the time, like credit card processing, it was very difficult to get a dealer to even take your phone call, right? Nobody wanted to talk to me. So I had to be different. So I came up with this strategy where I would send a dealership a shoe in the mail with a note that said, I'm just trying to get my foot in the door.
Oh,
I've been using it for 25 years.
Wow. I feel bad because people are about to do shoe strategy like crazy right now. Wow. That's
good work. I've had dealers call me back like as soon as they open the package. They're like, can I hire you to sell? I'm like, no.
Oh my God. It's funny. Like you just made me realize that there are several people in our industry that have very just distinct looks or they wear something. So like, I'll give you an idea, right? Like Rita Case, her hats, right? Like you see, boom, first thing I thought about. By the way, I thought you were going to tell me the shoes that you wear potentially that were different. And then another one is an Instagram account I enjoy, Benson Bow Ties. So he works at a dealership and he wears bow ties. So that's again, unique. Personally, on a personal level, I didn't have any of these unique strategies when I was in sales. And so I went old school. I just smiled. Like I was like a goofball. Like you would see me and I would just smile like this big grin. You're just like, why is this guy looking like this? But I didn't know any better. I literally did not know any better. And it's such a disarming thing you can do. Like as a human, when you just look at someone and you just smile, they are like, they let their guard down. It's incredibly effective. Like I'm obviously speaking from lots of experience, but I highly recommend it. It's a simple one, but it's a very effective one for sales. Okay. Well, what does the future look like for your company?
I think it's very bright. I think we're in a position right now where growth is the only way to go. We've accomplished a lot with a very limited staff, and we're ready to really push the envelope and get out more so than just the Midwest and get into some of these other areas of the country, get more of a national presence. This has been a great year because we've landed some really good relationships with some enterprise dealers. I feel comfortable with what we're providing them. And I'm also very excited about sort of what's on the horizon with new developments and new processes for them. That's kind of been what my passion is. I never, I guess, envisioned when I was younger that I would be the payments lady for car dealers, but I love it. I mean, it's brought a lot of success to me personally. I've been able to grow a company and see my staff be successful. So it's rewarding. And at the end of the day, my dealers are more successful because of me. So I enjoy what I do.
Are you able to see data on your end of like average down payment or stuff like that? Like if you pull all your dealers together, like can you see trends? Like is average down payment now going back up? Is it down, flat? I'm curious on that end.
Yeah. And I think it depends on the car brand a little bit. But yeah, I mean, it used to be where it was like $500 and now I've seen 5,000 and even higher. It also used to be where dealers didn't let finance take a credit card down payment for more like 2,000 or 3,000. And now that's changing as well because there's a way to pass the fees, right? So let that customer put 10 grand down and then charge them up the right. So that's changed quite a bit. But, you know, I think sales and finance has always been a little bit careful, I guess is a good word, when it comes to payments on a credit card, just being borrowed money and all.
Yeah. So since like 2020, has that impacted your business? Because like initially I'm thinking that it would have been a boon to your business because prices went up and they outpaced inflation, which means that you're taking a larger VIG or your percent is the same, but the amount is obviously larger. But I'm curious if like, has that negatively impacted your business to the point where dealers are like, hey, actually, I'm not accepting credit cards, or I'm curious how that's impacted?
No, it's actually been beneficial for the most part. I did pull some stats for 24 just to kind of give you an idea of what dealer pay is doing. 4 million transactions, 11 billion in volume. One of the things, Josie, I like to point out is we've also saved dealers over 5 million in attempted fraud fraud transaction and savings programs of up to 15.5 million in processing fees. So we're pretty proud of those numbers and looking to see those increase as well.